Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church in Columbia, South Carolina, where we're part of the ELCA. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. You probably know the catchphrase from the Allstate Insurance Company, "You're in good hands with Allstate." What they are trying to communicate to us is that in all times, good times and bad times, Allstate Insurance will be there to protect, nurture, and care for you. Now, I don't know if Allstate does that, but I'm sure we all want to be kept in good hands. As we wrap up this week of looking at women in the Bible who are often overlooked, today we want to consider two women, each of whom are mentioned in only one verse in the New Testament. But in those verses we get a sense that with them the early church was indeed in good hands. The first woman we want to talk about is Chloe. I think it would have been easy for Paul to give up on the church in Corinth. Paul spent several years with them, and once he left, the scholars believe he may have written as many as 7 letters to them to try to fix problems and misunderstandings that arose. He must have loved that church to have dedicated so much to it. Having said that, Chloe was a member of the church in Corinth, and when one particularly vexing problem came up, she was the one who let Paul know about it. That's all she did. The only reason she's mentioned. But that one act was truly significant. What was going on in the Corinthian church was that other preachers of the gospel had come along since Paul had left, and each one had gathered a following. Some were saying, "I belong to Paul," or "I belong to Apollos," and so on. Already the church was splitting into different denominations. It's not too much of a stretch to compare this to Lutherans comparing themselves to Baptists or Presbyterians and claiming that only they had the true way to worship. It was divisive. Or maybe you have been part of a congregation that became divided over some issue. Hardly anything can be more hurtful and painful. That was the kind of thing that was going on in Corinth. Paul was no longer there, having left Corinth to spread the news of Jesus to people in other places. However, Chloe sent people to let Paul know what was going on. That's more important than it may seem. Chloe was likely a leader in that church, and when she reported the division to Paul, she wasn't gossiping, but rather she was turning to her pastor for help. She acts out of love for her whole community, and she doesn't try to fix the church herself, and instead seeks guidance from her pastor. This was somewhat risky. Those on different sides could have been angry with her for tattling, but Chloe chose unity over her own comfort. She cared for her church family and turned for help to hold it together. With her, the church was in good hands. The other woman we need to think about today is the woman named Nympha. Now, frankly, I had never really noticed Nympha before or realized the quiet importance of what she did. She is mentioned in the closing verses of the New Testament book of Colossians, and Paul says simply, "Give my greetings to the brothers and sisters in Laodicea, and to Nympha and the church in her house." With that, the only mention of her, no wonder we have overlooked her. But here's the thing. Nympha hosts a church in her home. For centuries, that's where the early church worshiped, in people's homes. To host required resources, leadership, and courage. Nympha must have had all of that, but still, that's not the most important thing. I'm sure you've heard this before, but perhaps Nympha makes it explicit. The church is not a building. The church is the people. Nympha didn't have an impressive sanctuary for worship. She had her home. The church isn't a place you go. The church is who you are. Rather than belonging to a church, maybe we should go about being the church. in her simple act of providing her home for a place. That's what Nympha shows us. Now, before we wrap up, I think it's important for us to reflect for just a moment on the role of women. The role of women in the Bible, and in particular with Phoebe, Lydia, Chloe, and Nympha from the ministry of Paul. We need to note that women had equal share in the ministry of the gospel. They were not second class or overlooked, but equal partners in faith, in witness, in supporting the church, and in serving one another. Maybe these ladies open our eyes to the important work that women among us do today. We are in good hands. Women's hands, to be sure. God's hands, even more. Thanks for sharing these moments with me, and remember to let this day belong to God.